Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Whitfield Report. Thank you for tuning in very much. And sorry we're late for tonight's show. Anyway, we had some technical difficulties, but we're here now. Contact info, as always. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SMD_NDC, hashtag Whitfield Report. You can follow me on Gab at SMD_NDC, hashtag Whitfield Report as well, facebook.com/Whitfield Report, and thesamwhitfield.com, and as always, subscribe to the audio podcast for all your needs. Folks, I have to be honest and pretty upfront with you. I have not really paid attention to the news or any current events this week. There was, something happened late last week on Sunday, or rather Saturday after last week's show. I found out that a close family friend of mine passed last week, or rather the father of a close family friend of mine. So because of that, I haven't really paid much attention to current events or the news, so really this evening has been the first time I've really looked at what's going on in the headlines. I do want to cover this incident of the bombs showing up at left-wing figures' homes like George Soros and Hillary Clinton and a couple others. Lots in the news about that, and in all honesty, folks, I'd like to call this a false flag operation. I don't know that it is. It could legitimately be some crazy guy that did this. But no matter what happens, the left is going to use this to highlight and make it seem like all Trump supporters are now, trying to become terrorists. And, as the title of the show suggests, this is how desperate the left is now, right? Think about it this way, folks. They've completely shot their credibility. Between the Kavanaugh hearing was really what did them in, right? That whole witch hunt of bringing Kavanaugh up on, let's call it what it was. It wasn't a hearing. It was a witch trial. It was a media circus. They were trying to prosecute, an innocent man for basically misogyny. That's what they were trying to do at the very least. But Kavanaugh survived that and was confirmed, and so that narrative blew up in their face. For the last year or so, they've propped up Stormy Daniels, an adult film star, and made her a figurehead simply because she slept with Trump, and there was a whole lawsuit, claiming that Trump abused her or something like that. Her lawsuit got thrown out, and she actually had to pay for Trump's attorney fees, which I guarantee you, I would hate to be her and have to, pay Trump's legal fees and whatnot. So that blew up in their face, and then Elizabeth Warren still won't give up on the claim that she, is a Native American minority. And she did take a DNA test, finally, and it turns out that she's 1/127th Native, Hispanic Indian. But it was so ridiculous and, just a waste of time that even the Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi, said that it was completely ridiculous. So, the Democrats have basically shot themselves in the foot here, ladies and gentlemen. The quote-unquote blue wave is now hardly a blue trickle. It's more like a blue drip now from an old water faucet. But the red tide, it's interesting. Usually the party that has the White House, that has the executive branch, doesn't really show up for primaries. But because of all the left's cockamamie bullcrap, I know more Republicans and more conservatives and more liberty-oriented people like myself who are now energized for the midterms. And so not only is the blue wave not happening, but the red tide, if we want to call it that, the red tide is coming just as hard and just as fast as Trump's campaign. That's my prediction. So, whether or not this was a false flag attack, okay, I'm not confirming and I'm not denying. I'm not saying that this was a false flag attack. It might have been, but these sent bombs could have been a I think these bombs could have been a false flag attempt, but I also think they could have just been a legitimately crazy guy. Either way, the left is going to use this to pin it on conservatives and make it seem like this guy was a right-winger. In fact, the New York Times has already done so. Now, I hate to go to the New York Times because they're an absolute rag, but let me just read a little bit of this to you. From the New York Times Online, Caesar Sayok, mail bombing suspect, found an identity in political rage and resentment. Caesar Sayok Jr. was a volatile nobody desperate to become a somebody. He styled himself as a bodybuilder, entrepreneur, member of the Seminole tribe, an exotic dance promoter, and the status hungry beachfront world of South Florida. In reality, Mr. Sayoc, a fervent supporter of President Trump who has been charged with mailing pipe bombs to prominent Democrats, was a bankrupt loner who spewed anger and spent years living in and out of the van, according to court documents and interviews with people who knew him. He went on racist anti-gay tirades at the Fort Lauderdale pizza shop where he worked as a night shift deliveryman in 2017, telling his manager, a lesbian, that she and other gay people, along with Democrats, should all be put onto an island and then nuked. At a reunion event in 2015 with his college soccer team, he browbeat former team members with racist, sexist conspiracy theories. And when Mr. Sayoc's mother and sisters urged him to seek mental health treatment, he furiously repelled their efforts and told his mother he hated her, said Ronald Lowry, a lawyer for the family who also represented Mr. Sayoc in a 2002 case when he threatened to bomb an electric company during a dispute over a bill. Let's see. He refused to even listen to his mother when his mother reminded Mr. Sayoc that he was Filipino and Italian, not Seminole. He had tremendous anger slowly boiling up and resentment and felt less than. Mr. Lawler said he lacked an identity. He created a persona. What is absolutely right. A man lived in a town by the river. You mean like Matt Floyd? That's never gets old. Point being here, folks, I don't need to go on, but the article goes on to basically characterize him as a radical right-wing nut job. So, yeah, what is absolutely right. The timing of these are a little too convenient. It's also a little too convenient in my book that the one guy who is the perfect stereotype of what every conservative is, according to the left. I mean, this guy is the perfect stereotype. He is a racist. He is a homophobe. And he's been in trouble before, and even down here in the article, you can see, I think he was attracted to Trump as a father figure. So, and that's another stereotype, that we all worship Trump. I don't worship Trump at all. The only one I worship is Jesus Christ. But that is the, that's the stereotype that the right deifies Donald Trump. We only call him God Emperor Trump because it annoys you people on the left. That's literally the only reason why Trump has God Emperor status. It's a parody. We don't take Trump that seriously. So, regardless of whether this was a false flag, or whether this was just some crazy guy, it doesn't matter, because the left, as seen from this New York Times article, and I'll link it in the show notes, as always, for those of you that want to read it. As always, it doesn't matter because they're going to use this to make the right seem toxic and crazy. Now, the left loves to use crisis. They love to use crises like these to make stuff up. In fact, I didn't download it, but let me search for this on YouTube real quick. Remember there was that famous quote from Rahm Emanuel a few years ago about never let a serious crisis go to waste. Let me pull that up real quick. So I mean, it is pretty obvious that whether or not this was manufactured or organic, they are using this as a way to deify, or rather to demonize their enemies and make themselves seem like nothing was their fault. Why? Because they have nothing, they can't do anything else. There's nothing that they can do to make themselves look clean in this. So, Emmanuel. Yeah, I love how, oh, okay. Never. Wow. Wow, this was actually still in the search predictions. Alright, so here's the clip from the Wall Street Journal. Hopefully this still works. So let me pull up the screen here. So here's Rahm Emanuel's famous quote on the opportunity of crisis. This is exactly what the left is doing here, ladies and gentlemen. So clip number 1, roll it.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before. I think America as a whole in 1973 and 1974, not just my view, but obviously the administration, missed the opportunity to deal with the energy crisis that was before us. For a long time, our entire energy policy came down to cheap oil. This is an opportunity. What used to be long-term problems, be they in the healthcare area, energy area, education area, fiscal area, tax area, regulatory reform area, things that we had postponed for too long that were long-term are now immediate and must be dealt with. And this crisis provides the opportunity for us, as I would say, the opportunity to do things that you could not do before. The good news, I suppose, if you want to see a silver lining, is the problems are big enough that they lend themselves to ideas from both parties for the solution. That is also, we didn't just do the meeting with Senator McCain and Senator Lindsey. The president did not have that meeting just for optics. We covered very serious issues as it relates to spending reforms on government approach. He brought the idea of defense procurement. We brought the idea of his corporate welfare commission. But how to spend money different, because it's not an argument about big government versus small government, but more effective government, so you actually are getting your bang for the buck that the taxpayers and all those who put money into it expect, whether that be in the area of education or healthcare. The 5 reforms that we see, one in healthcare would be in the area that deals with cost control as a principle and expansion of coverage. Energy with both independence and alternatives. In the area of taxes, fairness, as well as simplicity. in the area of education, there's got to be fundamental reforms there as it relates to making sure that we are effectively training the workforce. And I'm glad to see that one of the number, I think your second principle, is an educated, trained workforce. You cannot be in an era of where you earn what you learn and have both our education system from K to 12 as well as our access to higher education, and I'm not just talking about four-year but also community colleges. That needs a fundamental overhaul that is the bridge fundamentally to the future. And lastly, financial regulatory overhaul with the principles of both, I would say, transparency and accountability.
All right, so Rahm Emanuel. Now, keep in mind this clip is from November 19th, 2008. So almost 10 years ago now. Hard to imagine, but I remember when this clip came out. You know, this clip is 10 years old. Now, Rahm Emanuel is talking about the opportunities of crisis as it relates to renewable energy, quote unquote, and basically admitting to, well, we can use the energy crisis to basically force new energy regulations in and make the climate deniers look bad, and also create new jobs in this renewable energy sector. Now, that's all fine, well, and dandy. What Rahm Emanuel is talking about there, but there's no doubt that the left has also now applied this theory without a doubt to destroying their political opportunity, destroying their political opponents. Whether or not they manufactured the crisis, i.e. These mail bombings, or let's just say that the official story for all intents and purposes is true, and that this really was a crazy one-off loner guy. Let's say that the official story is true. It doesn't really matter whether this is a false flag or whether this guy was legitimately crazy and legitimately acting on his own, because the left is going to use this as an opportune crisis to demonize the Republicans and make them look bad. We've already seen on Twitter, Jim Carrey did this repeatedly towards the end of the week. So did Alyssa Milano. And by the way, to my fellow conservatives out there on Twitter, I know that she's an entertaining example of left-wing lunacy to cite, but honestly, at this point, I think if we stopped retweeting her, giving her tweets any views, I think she would just go away. This is, we always like to say to the left, don't feed the trolls. Well, we're feeding a troll. That's what she is. So, let's cut it out in terms of that. But, but then I was also thinking of another incident where literally the fraying of your enemy could be used to change the narrative. Now, this is completely fictional, but a few years ago, during the last season of the Netflix show House of Cards, obviously, for most of you who listen to this podcast and who are politically astute probably have either seen House of Cards at least once before, or at least familiar with the premise. Frank Underwood, the corrupt Democrat president, played by Kevin Spacey, during last season of House of Cards, he and Claire Underwood, the First Lady, who is they're essentially Bill and Hillary. Right? That's what House of Cards basically is. It's Bill and Hillary except for fictionalized. They essentially create a crisis, a terror attack, to basically get themselves reelected. They create a crisis and say that they're the ones who can protect people from this in order to stay in power. Now I have a clip of a scene, an excerpt where they're planning this, and it's Robin Wright's character, Claire Underwood, discussing this, and it's really eerie. I rewatched this scene, and it's really eerie how it can be almost applied to what the Democrats are doing today. Hopefully this doesn't get the video flagged, although if it does, I've got a backup recording of this, which is why it took me so long to set up the show. I wanted to get my backup recordings set up for this exact thing. So anyway, here is an excerpt from Season 4 of House of Cards. The scene in which Claire Underwood, played by Robin Wright, is talking about fear tactics to throw off their political opponents. Clip number 2. Roll it.
We make time. We can't fight everything off one by one, Francis. But if we make this, we make it work for us.
Create chaos.
More than chaos.
There's Bill.
War.
Fear.
Fear. Brutal. Total.
I'm done trying to win over people's hearts.
Hillary.
Attack their heart.
We can work with fear.
Yes, we can.
You should put on a fresh suit.
The navy blue.
Yes, the navy blue.
So, they're basically in that scene basically manufacturing a war and a false terror attack so that people will be afraid and re-elect them out of fear. And that's what the Dems are doing with this whole bomb thing. Whether or not they manufactured it or whichever end, they're going to try and make this crisis work for them. Oh my God, we were right. Trump is inciting violence. This Rayout guy is a radical Trump supporter. He's crazy. They can't be trusted. We need the blue wave. We need to get it in Congress so we can impeach Trump and restore peace and sanity. That's the narrative. Despite the fact that Antifa has repeatedly been the ones stirring up violence, despite the fact that Rand Paul and Steve Scalise and prominent conservative and libertarian politicians have been victims of assassination attempts by Antifa. None of that matters to the left. Because they're on the wrong side of politics. Now, all of a sudden, all these pipe bombs go to all of these Democrat leaders just mere days before the election all at once, and they don't go off. Yes, I do believe that the timing is a little suspicious of that. Sorry, I'm not really into conspiracy theories, most people know, but this is one where you have to look at this and say, this happened mere days before the primaries, after the Dems have exhausted everything else. Rush Limbaugh, I want to play a clip for you of this. Rush Limbaugh was on Fox News on Hannity 2 weeks ago now, celebrating his 30th year in talk radio. By the way, people who hate me, obviously long-time listeners know this about me, but Rush is the reason why I started this whole entire journey into podcasting and talk radio. He's the reason for the existence of this program and its many iterations. So, I forgot to say it 2 weeks ago, but congratulations to Rush on 30 years leading the conservative movement in media. Now, Rush has said that the left is increasingly desperate and that, any crisis they can use, they're going to. So here is Rush talking about that with John Hannity on Hannity's show. Clip number 2. Clip number 3, actually. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So this isn't the whole interview, but yeah. Oh, who the hell hates me? Sam, we're gonna need names. Oh, well, George Soros hates me. Antifa trolls definitely hate me. The alt-right also hates me, as well. That's the funny thing. Richard Spencer's fanboys hate me because I still like the Jews, but yeah. Most people once they get to know me though love me, so that's the cool thing at least. All right. Here is Rush with Hannity talking about about 30 years on radio and just how desperate the left is becoming. Clip 3.
Further ado, we are in the studios of Rush Limbaugh. First, I want to congratulate you. 30 years, talk radio, the king of talk radio, and going stronger than ever.
It's amazing. It really is. I'm enjoying it as much as I ever have, if not more so. I get more thrills from it. I get more satisfaction from it than I've ever had. If you would have told me 30 years ago, or even 40, when I was dreaming of all this, that by the time I reached 65, that it would be more competitive than ever, that I would be more involved than ever. I thought 65, well, you got left to prove. You phone it in, you take it easy, you go to the beach, do a couple hours a week, and that's it, like Johnny Carson did. I can't imagine not doing this. And I think largely because of you, as you just laid out, we are seriously at a tipping point. I don't know. I worry. I don't know how many people actually are aware of how close we are to losing our country as founded. There's always going to be an America, but what is it going to be? And it really is at stake. And I've been trying in I don't know how many ways to explain to my audience why it's different now than it was 15 years ago or 20. And I do it by trying to analyze who the left is, what they have become. I'm naive in many ways. And I
might take a little objection to Rush being naive.
You tell me if this is naive.
Yeah.
I look at what happened during the Kavanaugh hearings. You just described Ricin and the stuff to Susan Collins. We looked at the literal mob behavior that was inspired, bought and paid for by the Democrat Party. The media encourages it. In my naive world, that behavior would secure the biggest landslide defeat a political party has ever had. In a sane world where decent people are the majority, that would be rejected out of hand. It wouldn't even be considered relevant. And the people of this country would want to get rid of that as quickly as they could. But yet, it may be close to 50% of the country. I don't think it is, and I hope not. But the fact that it continues to survive, I've evolved a bunch of theories to explain it. And I really think, by the way, interrupt any time with a question.
No, I don't. You're doing great, Rush.
I really think that all of this, or the vast majority of it, still, Sean, revolves around one of the age-old arguments that left versus right has had, and that is role of government in our lives. Now, the people on the left, I read some of it, Jim Garrity at National Review about a month ago now, and it just struck me because I think it's dead on. I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He said what has happened in his view, and I endorse this, I think, even more than he did. I think it's a bigger point than he made it. These people on the left that you've described, the mob behavior, is really a series of psychological disorders that have taken over politics. We have politicized psychological disorders to the point now that they have become the objective of the Democrat Party, solving all of these disparate, separate psychological disorders, having the government do it. Basically...
Well, I also have to interrupt there and say that the left has not only... I mean, they've essentially created a lot of these psychological disorders here, too. I mean... They've encouraged gender dysphoria like nobody's business. What are we up to now, according to these people? 57 genders? Is that it's either 48 or 57, and it's growing every day. It's ridiculous. Brian, what are we up to in the gender? Well, you might not be the one to ask since you're not on Facebook or Twitter very much. But can someone tell me how many genders the left claims there are now? Because I know it's a whole hell of a lot, and I'm not doing a bit here, folks. The left now legitimately thinks that there are a whole bunch of genders. It's more than 20 now. So, yeah. The left are puppets. The SJW and BLM and all of our millennials who feel entitled are just pawns. Their lives are nothing to the political elite that run them. Exactly, Island. I couldn't agree with you more. And yet, because of that, and yet, basically, the elites are using all these people to get back into power and to drum up fear in as an army. I think, Alan, you may have missed this, but a few minutes ago I played a clip from House of Cards, which again is fictional, but It basically illustrates artistically how the left uses how the left can pretty much manufacture crisis opportunities in order to stay in political power. Okay, Jeff searched it. There are 58 possibilities on Facebook for gender. 58 fucking gender possibilities. And Facebook takes it all seriously. Too. That's the... I mean, you would think that at some point they would laugh at how ridiculous, but no. The fact that they have 58 genders, it's nonsense. And yet, the people who the radical left are targeting, they've bought it hook, line, and sinker. They're buying the myth that podcasts like Alex Jones, even though I disagree with a lot about what Alex says, they're agreeing with the fact that they're now buying this myth that Alex Jones is somehow a terrorist. They're trying to go after Rush now, and I'll get back to Rush in a sec. They're trying to go after Limbaugh, saying that he's inciting violence. I've been accused of inciting violence on this podcast. And whenever people tweet that at me or whatnot, I'll ask them to cite specific examples. And they can't do it. They'll make stuff up that I didn't say. And then when I ask them for the specific date or for the specific episode when I said that, they can't cite me for saying any of this. So, yeah. Fractional identity sorting organized by moon phases in one of the patterns. Stay tuned for the latest. I'll agree. Yeah, well, see, Gabe, if they were doing it by moon patterns, though, or weather patterns, or even if they were doing it by something even like mythological, like, Greek myths or something, like, that would make a whole lot more sense. But they're literally just pulling all this identity politics out of their ass. There's no basis for any of what they're doing right now. It would be laughable if it weren't getting so dangerous now. But well, I don't advocate violence ever. But I will say this. It's getting to the point where if they try and do something to me, I'm not going to take it sitting down. Literally. If they try attacking me, they're gonna get their feet run over. Or worse. If you've ever been hit by a power wheelchair, well, let's just say you don't want to. It's not going to hurt as bad as getting hit by a full-blown car, but it still hurts a whole hell of a ton. So, yeah. Well, yeah, Gabe. I like that. The part phrase. Hey, just we could also get like skunk juice or actual like live skunks. Weren't they trying to do well? They tried throwing piss at Lauren Southern a few years ago. I remember that. But yeah, anyway, the violent BS never ends with these people. And yet now, the violent BS never stops with these people. They continue attacking Trump supporters, or not even people who are Trump supporters. Remember back in 2017, immediately after the election, they beat up that black guy who was retarded, medically retarded. Yeah, I love that you know that. Iwan says you can buy that skunk scent at Bass Pro. Yeah, well, I would stock up on. I would stock up on that shit and just launch it from like a water cannon or something against Antifa. Because that's what we really need to do. We need to. We might not need to react violent, but I am starting to like this idea of getting like really powerful deterrence against them. So, yeah. Well, I mean, there's always the chance. Well, never mind. I was going to say that there's always the chance that they could use it against us, but never mind. They already have. So, there's that. Anyway, folks, I guess the bottom line and the moral of tonight's show is the left is never. The left is so desperate now that they're literally using the bomb crisis, whether it was manufactured or not. Either way, they've used it to try and change the narrative. But I don't think it'll work. I don't think it'll work. I think that this, quote unquote bomb scare will blow up in their faces, eventually. Well, not eventually, but it'll blow up right before the election, and they're still going to use, because this is how desperate they're getting. So, anyway. Alright, folks, that'll do it for tonight's show. From all of us here at NGC1, have a good night. God bless. God save this great nation. And stay tuned for a bonus podcast coming up either tomorrow or later in the week. Good night. God bless. And God save this great nation. Thank you for watching live if you have done so. And thank you for listening to the audio podcast. Whenever and wherever you may be.